Today, I invite you into a realm far more powerful than the physical actions you take, the strategies you study, or the efforts you multiply. I invite you into the inner workshop of your own imagination, the true source of wealth, the silent architect of your financial world, the unseen engine that has been shaping every experience of abundance or lack in your life. To train your brain to make more money is not to force your mind into new habits, but to awaken it to its original, limitless creative nature. Because the mind is not merely a tool, it is the birthplace of every form, every opportunity, every income stream, every unexpected blessing you have ever encountered. You may believe that money arises because of work, connections, talent, timing, or luck. But these are only shadows cast by a far greater cause, the state of consciousness you occupy. If you want to earn more, live more, and rise higher, you must first elevate the internal state from which you think, feel, and assume. Your brain does not change your finances. Your assumed identity does. Once you shift who you believe yourself to be, your brain, your emotions, your habits, your creativity, and your external world fall perfectly into alignment. When you assume the feeling that wealth is natural, effortless, and inevitable for you, everything in life bends itself to confirm that assumption. To train your brain for more money, you must understand its one great weakness and its one great strength. Its weakness is that it cannot distinguish between imagination and reality. Its strength is that it cannot distinguish between imagination and reality. Let that sink in for a second. Whatever you rehearse inside your mind, your brain interprets as truth and reorganizes your entire worldview to match. If you dwell in fear of not having enough, the brain faithfully constructs a life that reflects scarcity. If you dwell in the feeling of being financially supported, the brain begins generating ideas, nudges, insights, and opportunities that mirror abundance. The problem is not that people lack potential. It is that they chronically imagine the worst and call it being realistic. They rehearse limitations, fear, debt, and struggle with such consistency that their brain becomes trained to expect difficulty. And the brain, like a loyal servant, gives them exactly what they persistently assume. But the moment you choose a new assumption, the moment you inwardly accept that you are meant for wealth, that you are worthy of ease, that money flows to you in greater and greater quantities, your brain begins restructuring itself at the deepest neurological level. This is not fantasy. It is biology. It is consciousness shaping matter. Inner experience reorganizing external reality. You must understand that your brain is constantly filtering out billions of pieces of information every second. It selects only what aligns with your dominant belief about yourself. If you believe you are someone who struggles financially, your brain filters out opportunities that could improve your life because they don't match your self-image. If you believe money comes to you easily, your brain begins highlighting possibilities, connections, and ideas that previously seemed invisible. In truth, nothing changes except you. And when you change, the world rearranges itself around your new inner state. You are not training your brain to make money through effort. You are training it through identity. The most powerful shift you can ever make is the acceptance of a new self-concept, the self that already possesses abundance. When you fully inhabit that identity, your brain accepts it as fact and seeks out the external conditions that reflect that fact. A trained brain is not a brain filled with information. It is a brain filled with conviction. When the conviction becomes unshakable, circumstances rearrange themselves like obedient servants bowing before the throne of your assumption. Money responds not to desire, but to certainty. You may want wealth, you may wish for prosperity, you may dream of freedom, but if you internally entertain doubts, fears, or contradictory feelings, you block the very flow you are trying to receive. To train your brain for more money is to practice the feeling of already having it, long before it appears in physical form. This feeling is not delusion, it is the law of creation. Everything that exists in your life today was once an invisible assumption you held about yourself. And everything that will exist in your future is being created by the assumptions you hold in this moment. The inner conversation you silently rehearse is the script your brain obeys. If you want to rewrite your financial future, rewrite your inner dialogue. Speak to yourself as someone who earns easily. Hear the inner voice that celebrates your success. Feel the emotional relief, gratitude, and confidence of someone who already has more money than they need. These invisible conversations are seeds. With repetition, your brain accepts them as truth, and the world becomes the soil where those seeds burst into visible harvest. To train your brain, you must also withdraw your attention from appearances. The outer world is only the echo of your past thinking. Looking at your current financial reality and judging yourself by it is like reading an old diary and assuming it must define your tomorrow. Your bank balance does not reflect your future. It reflects your old state of being. The moment you assume a new financial identity, one who earns, one who receives, one who grows, you have stepped into a different timeline. And if you persist, reality must conform. The challenge is persistence. Most people try to assume abundance, but they check the physical world too quickly. They expect instant confirmation. When they don't see immediate change, they abandon their new assumption and return to their old identity. They train their brain in lack, even while trying to affirm prosperity. But the trained mind does not seek validation. The trained mind creates validation. It lives in the unseen with loyalty, devotion, and certainty. It knows that the inner world is the cause and the outer world is merely the delayed effect. Now imagine the version of yourself who already earns the money you desire. Imagine their confidence, their posture, their habits, their emotions. Imagine how they walk, how they speak, how they think. That version of you exists right now in consciousness. It is not a future self. It is a parallel self waiting to be embodied. When you emotionally merge with that identity, the brain begins to receive new instructions. It shifts from survival mode to creation mode, from fear to expansion, from limitation to possibility. This shift is the true work, and when it happens, the external world must bow to it. Your brain does not need logical pathways to make more money. It needs a new identity. Once that identity is installed, the pathways appear. You begin meeting the right people at the right time. You begin feeling inspired to take action that once felt intimidating. You begin noticing opportunities that were always there but invisible to your old state of mind. Wealth does not come from the outside. It comes through your state of being. The world simply reflects the wealth you have already accepted within. Every time you imagine yourself wealthy, you are training your brain. Every time you feel abundant, even when appearances contradict you, you are training your brain. Every time you choose faith over fear, certainty over doubt, gratitude over complaint, you are training your brain. And every time you assume the feeling of already being financially supported, you are activating the most powerful force in existence, the creative capacity of your consciousness. To make more money, you must stop trying to force results and begin embodying the version of yourself who already has results. This is the essence of transformation, not effort, but assumption. When you assume the new state, your brain becomes the servant of that assumption. It begins generating ideas, impulses, and emotional responses that align with the identity of a wealthy person. And because your actions will always align with your self-concept, money naturally flows toward you. You train your brain through repetition. The same way a muscle grows only when repeatedly challenged, the brain rewires itself only when repeatedly saturated with a new belief. You cannot assume wealth once and expect permanent change. You must dwell in the feeling, return to it, reaffirm it, nurture it. Let your mind become so familiar with the state of abundance that anything outside of it feels unnatural. When the feeling becomes your home, the brain has been successfully trained. There will be moments when your old beliefs attempt to pull you back. Poverty thinking, fear, doubt, these are simply remnants of previous assumptions. Do not fight them. Transcend them. Replace them gently but consistently with the new feeling of financial ease. Just as darkness cannot resist light, old beliefs cannot resist sustained new assumptions. The brain must follow the direction of your dominant feeling. One of the most overlooked aspects of training your brain for wealth is imagination. Imagination is not escape, it is creation. Every great fortune began as an imagined possibility. Before wealth appears in your bank, it must appear in your mind. Before it becomes income, it becomes identity. Imagination is the womb of reality, and what you can see within must eventually manifest without. If you want more money, imagine more money with feeling, with detail, with gratitude. Let your imagination be the rehearsal of your destiny. Another vital element is emotional alignment. The brain responds not merely to thoughts, but to the emotional charge behind them. If you speak affirmations of wealth while feeling fear, your brain receives the fear, not the words. But if you cultivate the feeling of already having money, even if only for brief moments, the brain accepts that feeling as evidence. Feelings are the language of the subconscious. Train the feeling and the brain will follow. You must also release the idea that making money is hard. What is hard is maintaining the belief that you are not meant for wealth. What is hard is living in contradiction with your own desires. What is hard is resisting the natural flow of abundance that consciousness wants to express through you. But once you accept wealth as natural, as normal, as available, the brain relaxes, expands, and becomes receptive to creative solutions. Effort becomes inspired rather than forced. Work becomes purposeful rather than painful. Opportunities become frequent rather than rare. Your job is not to figure out how the money will come. Your job is to assume that it already has. The brain will take care of the how. The world will take care of the how. The opportunities will take care of the how. Your only responsibility is the inner state. The moment you assume the feeling of being wealthy, the universe begins arranging itself to reflect that state. Training your brain is also about releasing identification with your past. You are not your history. You are your present assumption. Your past may contain struggle, debt, limits, or missed opportunities. But none of that has any power unless you carry the emotional residue of it into your current identity. The past is powerless unless you empower it. Today you can choose the identity of someone who rises above their history and steps into financial freedom. When you choose that identity, your brain receives new instructions. Your energy shifts, and your world responds. Money is not the root of transformation. Consciousness is. Money is simply a reflection of how much expansion, permission, and worthiness you allow yourself to embody. When you train your brain to believe you deserve more, you naturally receive more. When you train your brain to expect abundance, abundance becomes your norm. When you train your brain to assume that money flows to you easily, your life becomes a living confirmation of that assumption. There is nothing outside of you that holds the power to limit your financial destiny. Not the economy, not your job, not your education, not your environment. The only limit is the identity you insist upon. And the only way to make more money is to insist upon a new identity. One that aligns with wealth, confidence, creativity, and possibility. Today, I invite you to practice a simple but transformative exercise. Close your eyes and imagine that you have just checked your bank balance, and it displays an amount that once seemed impossible to you. Feel the shock, the gratitude, the joy, the relief. Let that feeling fill your entire being. Breathe it in. Let it become familiar. Let it become natural. Train your brain to accept that feeling as your new normal. Practice this feeling in quiet moments. Practice it before sleep. Practice it when doubt arises. Practice it until the feeling becomes so real that the physical world must rearrange itself to match it. You are not training your brain to chase money. You are training it to become a magnet for money. The magnet does not chase, it attracts. And attraction occurs through identity, not effort. When you become the version of yourself who naturally attracts wealth, money flows toward you with an ease that will astonish you. In truth, wealth is not something you pursue. It is something you allow. It has been trying to reach you all along, but your old assumptions stood in the way. Today, choose the assumption that invites it. Choose the self-concept that welcomes it. Choose the feeling that matches it. Train your brain to expect it. And when you do, you will discover that money was never the goal. Transformation was. Money is simply the evidence of your expanded consciousness. The world you experience is not separate from you. It is the mirror of your inner state. Train your mind and the mirror must change. Assume abundance and the mirror reflects abundance. Assume wealth and the mirror reflects wealth. Assume worthiness and the mirror reflects opportunities worthy of you. Nothing happens outside until it first happens inside. To train your brain for more money is to train it to believe in a new version of you, a wealthier version, a freer version, a more expansive version. And once your brain accepts that version, the physical world has no choice but to align. You have within you the power to reshape your financial destiny, not through force, not through hustle, not through desperation, but through assumption, imagination, and identity. Money is not outside of you. It is an extension of your consciousness. And the moment you master your inner world, the outer world becomes your masterpiece. This is the truth that liberates the mind, awakens the spirit, and transforms the bank balance. Train your brain to accept the feeling of wealth, and wealth becomes inevitable. Train your brain to feel financially supported, and support arrives from unexpected sources. Train your brain to assume abundance, and abundance flows to you in ways more beautiful than anything you could have scripted. Your only task now is to persist. Persist in the feeling, persist in the assumption, persist in the identity. Make the inner world more real than the outer, and the outer will reshape itself in obedience to your inner command. Your mind is the greatest financial asset you will ever have, and when you train it, truly train it, there is no level of wealth beyond your reach. As you continue to train your brain to make more money, you will notice a subtle but profound shift in the way you respond to life. Situations that once triggered fear will now awaken creativity. Bills that once felt heavy will now feel like reminders of your capacity to circulate energy. Conversations that once intimidated you will now inspire you. You will begin to feel a quiet inner confidence rising. A confidence that does not depend on external circumstances, but on your unshakable awareness of who you have chosen to become. And as this inner confidence grows, you will find that your actions become more aligned, more intuitive, and more effective. The trained mind is not frantic. It does not chase opportunities. It attracts them by standing in the certainty of its chosen reality. When you train your brain for wealth, you're not only expanding your financial life, but also your ability to remain centered in any situation. You are building the mental strength to hold the energy of abundance without collapsing under doubt. You are developing the emotional resilience to stay loyal to your desired reality, even when the physical world has not caught up yet. This resilience is the hallmark of those who rise above average outcomes and enter the realm of extraordinary success. One of the greatest gifts of training your mind is that wealth begins to feel natural to you. Many people desire money, but deep within, they do not feel worthy of it. They have been conditioned by family, society, or past experiences to believe that money is difficult, scarce, or meant only for a select few. As long as these beliefs linger in the background of consciousness, no amount of action will change their financial destiny. But when you train your brain to feel worthy of wealth, worthy of receiving, worthy of abundance, you dissolve the internal resistance that once blocked financial growth. Worthiness is not something you earn, it is something you claim. And the moment you claim it, your brain reorganizes itself around this new truth. Suddenly, you begin noticing opportunities to earn more. you begin recognizing how much value you already have within you. You begin seeing yourself as someone who can contribute, create, solve, innovate, and receive compensation accordingly. This shift alone can transform a person's financial trajectory faster than any strategy ever could. Training your brain to make more money also means developing a new relationship with the idea of money itself. Money is energy, a symbol, a medium of exchange. It flows where it feels welcomed. It avoids the environments where it feels resisted, feared, or resented. If you hold negative emotions about money, guilt, shame, anger, or distrust, you create an energetic barrier that prevents it from flowing freely into your life. But when you view money as a neutral tool, as something that expands your ability to contribute, create, and live fully, your brain shifts from resistance to receptivity. Receptivity is a powerful state for growing wealth. It opens the mind to insights, inspirations, and intuitive nudges that guide you toward prosperous actions. It increases the flow of ideas that can lead to financial breakthroughs. When you are receptive, you are no longer forcing life. You are allowing it, and the brain functions optimally in this state, creative, calm, and deeply attuned to opportunities. One of the most transformative ways to train your brain for increased wealth is to practice mental rehearsal. Mental rehearsal is the deliberate act of imagining yourself living your desired financial reality. It is more than daydreaming. It is the intentional creation of neural pathways that support your new identity. When you rehearse abundance in your mind, your brain cannot tell the difference between the imagined experience and a real one. It fires the same neurons, releases the same chemicals, and stores the same memories. Over time, the imagined identity becomes the dominant identity, and the outer world must follow suit. Mental rehearsal is powerful because it collapses the gap between desire and belief. Many people want more money, but they do not believe it is possible. They do not believe they are capable. They do not believe they are deserving. Through mental rehearsal, belief becomes natural because the experience becomes familiar. Familiarity is the key to manifestation. What the mind accepts as familiar, it assumes is true. What it assumes as true, it produces in physical form. As you continue training your mind, an important shift occurs. You stop looking at money as a destination and start seeing it as a byproduct of your identity. Money becomes an expression of the person you have chosen to become. When you embody the mindset of someone who creates value, solves problems, and operates from abundance, money becomes inevitable. It is not something you chase, it is something that flows from your state of consciousness. This inner transformation will shape the way you speak, the decisions you make, the opportunities you recognize, and the relationships you magnetize. You will begin gravitating toward environments that support your growth. You will feel naturally drawn to people who challenge you to expand. You will find yourself making choices that reflect your wealth identity rather than your scarcity programming. These changes are not forced. They feel natural because the trained mind aligns itself with the version of you that thrives. As you train your brain, you may notice moments where the old identity tries to pull you back. This is not a sign of failure, but of transformation. The old identity is losing power, and it attempts to regain control through familiar thoughts of fear, doubt, or self-criticism. When this happens, do not judge yourself. Simply return to the new state. Return to the feeling of abundance. Return to the assumption that money flows to you with ease. Each time you choose the new state over the old, you strengthen the neural pathways of wealth consciousness. The brain changes through repetition. The more frequently you occupy the state of abundance, even for brief moments, the faster your brain rewires itself. You may feel a shift in your energy. You may notice new ideas emerging. You may experience synchronicities that feel too perfect to be coincidences. These are signs that your inner transformation is taking effect in the outer world. Reality responds to consciousness faster than most realize, but it requires consistency. You cannot visit the state of abundance once and expect permanent results. You must live there. You must dwell there. You must make it your home. Training your brain to make more money also means dissolving the invisible limits you have placed on your earning potential. Most people live with unconscious ceilings, beliefs about how much they think they can earn, how much they believe is possible, or how much they feel they deserve. These limits are not real. They are inherited assumptions. They may come from childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, or past failures, but they hold no intrinsic truth. They're simply familiar patterns that the brain has mistaken for facts. To break these invisible limits, you must expand your imagination. Allow yourself to conceive of earning more than you ever have before. Let your mind explore the possibility of income flowing to you from multiple directions. Imagine yourself stepping into financial realities that once felt unattainable. Do not shrink your dreams to match your current circumstances. Expand your identity to match your dreams. When you train your brain to normalize higher levels of income, you naturally gravitate toward actions, decisions, and opportunities that align with those levels. As you continue this journey, you will recognize that wealth is not created through strain, but through alignment. Alignment is the state in which your thoughts, emotions, assumptions, and actions all point toward the same financial reality. When you are aligned, you experience flow. Ideas come effortlessly, decisions feel clear, opportunities appear at the perfect moment. You attract people who support your growth. You feel guided, inspired, and supported by life itself. This is the result of a trained mind, a mind that no longer fights reality but shapes it. It is important to understand that training your brain for wealth is not an overnight process. It is a gradual unfolding, an evolution of consciousness, but the more consistently you practice, the faster the transformation occurs. Some people experience dramatic shifts within days because they fully commit to the new identity. Others experience steady growth that compounds over time. Both paths are valid. What matters is persistence. Do not underestimate the power of small daily practices. A few minutes of imagining abundance before bed, a moment of gratitude upon waking, a conscious choice to speak words of wealth instead of fear, a decision to reject thoughts of limitation, a commitment to act from inspiration rather than desperation. These small practices accumulate week after week, month after month, until they reshape your entire financial reality. Over time, you may even begin to feel a sense of inevitability about your wealth. It will no longer feel like a possibility, but a certainty. This is the moment your brain has fully accepted the new identity. When wealth feels inevitable, it manifests with remarkable speed. People will call it luck, timing, or coincidence. But you will know the truth. It was a result of inner alignment. It was the outcome of training your brain to expect abundance. One of the most profound shifts you will experience during this process is the disappearance of fear around money. Fear will be replaced by trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your abilities, trust in the unseen forces that support your growth. This trust does not mean passivity. It means making decisions from a place of grounded confidence rather than anxious survival. When you trust that money flows to you, your actions carry a different energy. You take inspired risks. You invest in yourself with confidence. You move forward without hesitation. And the universe responds to that energy with greater opportunities. Training your brain for more money also deepens your sense of purpose. As you move into higher levels of abundance, you begin to understand that wealth is not merely for personal gain, but for expression, contribution, and expansion. You feel inspired to share your gifts, to uplift others, to create meaningful impact. You realize that abundance amplifies your ability to live authentically. And the more you live from authenticity, the more wealth flows to you. The trained mind experiences life differently. It does not crumble in the face of temporary setbacks because it knows that abundance is the permanent truth. It does not fear challenges because it understands that every challenge contains the seed of greater opportunity. It does not cling to the familiar because it is constantly expanding into new levels of possibility. This is the mindset of someone destined for great wealth. not because circumstances are perfect, but because consciousness is aligned. As your brain adjusts to this new state of abundance, your external life begins to reflect it. Unexpected financial opportunities arise. New sources of income appear. You meet people who open doors you never knew existed. You receive ideas that lead to breakthroughs. You take actions that produce significant returns. The transformation may begin subtly, but it grows exponentially. Once the momentum builds, it becomes unstoppable. And as this momentum grows, you find yourself feeling grateful not only for the money, but for the version of yourself you have become. You realize that the true wealth is not the money itself, but the expanded consciousness that created it. You see that the journey was never about chasing wealth, but about awakening the inner power that produces it effortlessly. Your brain becomes a partner in your financial expansion, not an obstacle. Your mind becomes your greatest ally. You begin to understand that wealth is not something you accumulate, but something you radiate. Money becomes a reflection of your internal abundance, not the source of it. And once you reach this level of clarity, there is no limit to what you can earn, create, or receive. This is the power of training your brain. This is the art of mastering your inner world. This is the path to creating wealth from the inside out. This is how you become the architect of your financial destiny, not through force or struggle, but through consciousness, identity, and unwavering inner conviction. And so, as you stand here now on the threshold of a new financial destiny, understand that nothing outside you holds the power to decide your wealth, only the state you choose to occupy. When you train your brain to assume abundance, when you dare to feel rich before the evidence appears, when you commit to the identity of someone who is naturally supported, guided, and prospered by life itself, the world must reshape itself in obedience to your inner command. Your mind is the source. Your imagination is the blueprint, and your assumption is the law. The moment you claim wealth as your truth, not as a hope, not as a wish, but as an unshakable inner certainty, money, opportunities, and success begin moving toward you with unstoppable force. Walk now in the feeling of the wealth you have already created within, and watch the entire universe rise to deliver the financial abundance that has always been yours.